Legend of Korra. The continuation of a great series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, that so many of us would have watched while we were kids. In many ways, this series took a major departure from the original series. It got into much more of the nitty-gritty danger of ideology and what it can be like to be caught on one side of it, or to be trapped in the middle of two dangerous forces. It is often the reason why we come to love or appreciate the characters who suffer through these difficulties, and even come to respect those who are supposed to be our enemies, or hate those who are meant to be our friends. For example, Amon appeared to be a man on a crusade to end the bias against non-benders. Tarlok wanted to protect his home from radicals. Unalak appeared to be truly concerned about the spiritual matters that influenced their world. Zahir desired freedom from tyranny of government, and Kavira wanted her home nation to be strong and safe. All seemingly good and well at first, but as a show that often presents numerous shades of grey that don't number 50, it is never as simple as that, and neither is this theory. Today, the question of this theory is the United Republic a rogue state? Now immediately, when we think rogue state, we naturally think North Korea, under glorious supreme people's loving, adoring, super mega awesome leader for all time, Kim Jong-un. You're probably thinking we have a screw loose. And you're not wrong. But hey, I'm going to explain. So let's start from a quick background. In the Avatar comics The Promise, after Zuko's rise as the Fire Lord, he sets out alongside Team Avatar and the Earth King to fulfill the goals of the Harmony Restoration Movement, a coalition to essentially reorganize the world to be put back to where it was before the 100 Years' War. This was mostly territorially, since undoing the genocide of the air nomads and the like was understandably difficult. Oh, rather impossible. Anyway, the Fire Nation's colonies that were established during the war would essentially be torn down and the colonials sent home. But it wasn't as easy as all that. And it never is. After coming to power, Zuko was confronted by an assassin from Udao, one of the oldest, if not the oldest colonies who were imposed or created by the Fire Nation. And they were upset about the idea about being handed back to the Earth Kingdom. The colonials and the locals had over time gotten used to living with each other, and they wanted it to stay that way. Their local economy had grown to rely on each other, so it would cause a lot of trouble just to split them back up again. Zuko resolved after seeing this himself that Udao should be able to be free of both the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Nation. Suffice it to say, soon the Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdom were back on the brink of war. Due to Team Avatar's intervention, Aang, who himself had worked through his own struggles on the issue, was able to bring Fire Lord Zuko and the Earth King to an agreement to allow Udao to be free of their nations and allow it to become a nation that ultimately would embody all of the world's cultures. That agreement eventually included all nations' approval and established the United Republic and appointed a council that would have a member from each signatory nation, so that it would not only include all the voices of the cultures, but that the United Republic would become a bulwark of world interests. Eventually, it created a national defense force called the United Forces, which, as the creators of the show called it, the Avatar world's equivalent of the United Nations, acting as a world security force. And so now we bring ourselves to Book Air. The United Republic is developed and wealthy, so much so that it was reputed as having a citizenry that was living it big. Udao is now known as the Republic City, and of course, the reality about the wondrous United Republic was a little different than what it appeared. But most of us watching would know about the Equalist rise and the reasons behind it. But what is more interesting is what happened after the Equalist rise. Did you notice during the Equalist coup, all but one of the councillors of the United Republic was captured? Tenzin, ironically, the one who stood out the most from the others, was the only one standing, and legally the sole ruler with what we know now to be near dictatorial power. Did you ever notice, over the history of the United Republic, that the council passed the laws, made the decisions, And Sokka, who was himself once chairman of the council, even showed in a historical flashback that the council acted as the highest court of justice. All three branches of government in one body. In that moment, it was all in Tenzin's hands. He was the only one free to make a vote. As such, his word was law. Although it was brief and it made little difference when Republic City was captured and General Iroh defeated by the Equalists, but it's starting to sound a little more like the power of a dictator, doesn't it? Or that's exactly what the power of a dictator is. This gives us further background to the next step. After Amon's fall at Korra's hands, the United Forces came and restored the Council to power. As an act of peacemaking with the defeated Equalists, the Council voted to replace itself with a presidential republic, a government presided over by the rule of the president, who will be Raiko, a non-bender backed by wealthy and eccentric people. Although like the unorthodox practices like such wealthy backers, what is perhaps the centerpiece of this rogue state theory is here. The election of Raiko was fraudulent and illegal and granted him near absolute power. As we know from earlier, the United Republic was established by what was likely a treaty primarily by the Earth King, the Fire Lord, and the Avatar. As such, as those who created the United Republic, they likely defined its form, so that it would include representatives from all of them. Even though they were the United Republic Council, they didn't have the authority on their own to alter the treaty that was put into force by the world's nations. Not them. Which means that they don't have the power to change it, even though it acts as their form of constitution. You could say that they got support to do this. After all, we know that Korra had seen what had happened to United Republic for herself, and she might have approved of it. We know that Fire Lord Azumi upheld her father's legacy of reconciling problems that were caused by the Fire Nation in the first place. She could have agreed. But I think we can adamantly agree together that from the words of Earth Queen Hu Ting herself,
the United Republic is Earth Kingdom territory.
She would not have agreed to a decision that would take away Earth Kingdom influence in the United Republic. It's much like the Treaty of Berlin in 1878, where it was decided that Austro-Hungary could occupy Bosnia but not annex it. In order to do so, they would need the nations that signed the treaty that made those conditions to agree to change it. Although, in history, Austria ignored this and just arranged circumstances to prevent the nations from stopping them from doing it. What likely happened in the Legend of Korra world, the Avatar world, is probably similar to what Austria did, was that the United Council probably acted without the Earth Queen's approval, acting against its own law and the foundation that the United Republic was built upon, committing the highest treason against its own country, causing the Republic, legally, to cease existing, thus making Raiko a rebel leader, a pirate nation president. Sealand. It's not hard to believe, as at this time, the Earth Queen was likely already without much good reputation or respect amongst the world's leaders, and the Council's disregard of her was plausible. As a result, the United Republic stopped depending on others and became their own nation, rather than a sort of United Nations with land. But was this just a nation's understandable act for freedom? Or did it really just have too many consequences, serious consequences? And one of the things that all nations ultimately rely upon is a thing called legitimacy. As long as a nation works according to its laws and its principles, it remains legitimate by all accounts. Although, what is the consequence of a lack of legitimacy? Well, apart from giving you a legal reason to shoot President Raiko as a traitor to the state, there were serious consequences that affected the world over for a nation that went opposite to its intended purpose. And after all, what is a rogue state without a dictator and serious world consequences? Am I right? And this culminates in Raiko's greatest blunder, which was his isolationist policy. It went directly against the United Republic's created role, allowing the subsequent occupation of the Southern Water Tribe by Unlak in the north. It's clear, established by Commander Bumi's own words, that the United Forces were regularly deployed overseas in the past, including missions in the mountains near Ba Sing Se. But Raiko's policy was not to intervene in foreign nations or foreign affairs. This sudden withdrawal gave Unalaq the opening he needed, and we know that this was Raiko's policy once Korra attempted to orchestrate a confrontation between the North and the United Republic. Raiko appeared on the scene and adamantly ordered General Iroh and the United Forces granted Indian Republic City until further notice. As we know, this had serious consequences for the world, as Unalaq was allowed to merge with Vaatu and attack Republic City in an event that could have destroyed world balance. Raiko's actions thereafter, choosing to blame the Avatar, certainly didn't help so far as vilifying one of the people who founded your nation goes, which certainly doesn't help legitimacy of the United Republic, but it was probably just another political attempt to sway blame. Raiko seemed incapable of understanding the consequences of his actions, which is not good for a leader of a rogue state. Am I right, Kim Jong-un? Forget that part. The resulting Red Lotus insurrection that Raiko and the Avatar couldn't contain allowed the Earth Queen to be murdered and the kingdom to fall into chaos. Now, that's not exactly Raiko's fault, but what Raiko did in response to this was appoint Kuvira, a relative unknown, save her connection with Suyin Beifong, to gather an army and tame the states and the bandits of the Earth Kingdom entirely on her own, without even a United Republic liaison to oversee or a peacekeeping force to assist her, while he spent his entire time focusing on preparing Prince Wu for a throne that he would not get. It just sounds like there's too many things that could go wrong, and they did. Kuvira came into the United Republic, humiliated the nation and Raiko before the world by taking the Earth Kingdom for herself. Once again, by refusing to send United Forces, which we have established has happened before, to help pacify the crisis in the Earth Kingdom, allowed a massively greater crisis to form. One that would even lead the unsuspecting president to be invaded by the very same dictator he created. Once again, not a good rogue state move. That was, not so good. Anyway, how did Kuvira justify that invasion? Well, the same way the Earth Queen did. The moment the United Republic ceased to have a council with an Earth Kingdom representative, it ceased to legally exist according to its founding treaty, breaking its legitimacy, and thus its territory reverted to its ancient owner. But in the short time we were able to see the United Republic during this series, Raiko was able to cause crises that were not designed to be solved by anyone but the United Republic, save the Avatar. In many ways, the United Republic was meant to be the Avatar's nation. It was meant to act in an Avatar way. It was meant to be able to uphold balance, solve problems, bring people together like the Avatar. As much as the Council didn't outright support Korra all the time, at least it partially did. And it ultimately became a threat to world peace, even if it wasn't engaging in hostility instead of what it was before. And now under Raiko, it's just bumbled its way into many more crises than it ever had before. And as a nation that legally shouldn't exist, it was only a matter of time that it would be challenged. Perhaps there might have been a better way. Maybe an extra seat for an elected representative from the United Republic? A larger council with Bender and non-Bender members? Who knows? But one thing that is for sure is that the United Republic went far beyond its intended purpose and role. And out of all the leaders that could have been elected after this illegal move by the previous council, Raiko took it and the world closer to oblivion than they would have liked. What do you think? Do you agree with this theory? If you have enjoyed this, please leave a like and a comment below, maybe even subscribe and be part of the conversation. And if you are interested in seeing more theories like this, please make a suggestion. Perhaps talk about some other theories that people haven't thought of before, or even from another show that we may or may not have seen. Just stick with us and see what other things that we might pull out that we've never thought of before. Join us next time as we continue on with our sequel theory from Legend of Korra, tackling what may prove to be an even more controversial theory than this. See you next time, guys.